So for Japanese Americans, um, it was difficult for the Japanese Americans. For the German Americans, there was prejudice, but the German Americans are harder to pick out. They're white. They had been in this country a lot longer than the Japanese Americans, and the Japanese Americans look different than a lot of the rest of America. And a lot of Asians who weren't Japanese were mistaken for Japanese Americans for this time. So there was discrimination when we went to war against Japan, explicit discrimination against the Japanese. And after Pearl Harbor, that discrimination became open hostility, bordering on hysteria against the Japanese, especially in places where we thought the Japanese might invade, like Oregon and California. In response, the government, and particular President FDR, issued Order 9066, and that is where we had 110,000 Japanese Americans removed from the West Coast and placed into internment camps. And these camps were often either right on the coast, sometimes maybe New Mexico, Arizona. A couple of them are as far away as Arkansas. But here you can see a picture of the internment camps and the barracks that these families were forced to live in. And on the bottom, you can see what the barracks look like on the inside. Next slide. In the internment camps, families who were forced to leave had to leave a lot of the possessions they couldn't carry with them at home. They lost their businesses. If they were farmers, they lost their farms. Here you can see them doing calisthenics. If you look at the picture in the lower left, it doesn't look all that different than prisoner of war camp pictures you would have seen during World War II. And in the bottom picture, you see American soldiers who were Japanese Americans. As amazing as it sounds, they still came to these internment camps and recruited the Japanese Americans to fight in the war. They weren't allowed to fight in the Pacific. They fought against the Germans, and young men signed up to go fight. The Supreme Court actually upheld the legality of the camps, and in 1988, each surviving internee was awarded $20,000 and an apology from the United States of America, which to me both seem like small potatoes. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team that you see pictured here at the bottom fought against the Germans in Italy and in through France, and I don't believe they actually invaded Germany. We might tell a couple of different stories during class about this, but I do want you to know this about the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. It was the most decorated regiment, not in World War II. Those men received more medals than anybody else in the history of American armed forces. That's how well they fought. And there's one story in particular we're going to tell you that should blow your mind the next class, because every time I hear it, it blows my mind. And here they are. Here they are in the top pictures during World War II. Here are survivors in the bottom left. And if you look on the bottom right, that is U.S. Senator Daniel Inouye, who we will tell you a story about. He's receiving a presidential citation from President Clinton there. That guy is one of the most amazing Americans to have ever lived. Now, for women, it was a little different. Women had flocked to high-paying jobs during wartime in war production industries. Women were able to pay off any debts they might have had. They were challenged in new and different ways. They found jobs that were more rewarding during the war. Women often wanted to leave these jobs. They weren't used to these jobs, but they took these jobs because they were patriotic. But a lot of times women were ready to get back to what they were doing before the war. Some women weren't. Some women loved the challenge. Here were the problems for women in the defense industry. They made less than men, more than they had previously, but still less than men. And most importantly, they added to the work that they were doing at home. They had child care to find. They had household duties, cooking and cleaning to take care of. After the war, America assumed that women wanted to leave their jobs and that men were going to take these jobs back again. And most women said that's fine, but a lot of women said, I love this job. I don't want to leave this job. But returning soldiers wanted their old jobs back, so those jobs that women had were vacated, and returning soldiers took them. Twice as many women as men lost their jobs at the end of the war. But I think most people in America at that time culturally would have said that's what should have happened. And that is the end of that lecture.